Hello and welcome to Celebrating Simple Life. I'm Kimberly and I've been planning parties and incredible events for the past 15 years. I'm passionate about connecting people, making gatherings purposeful, and making the most out of every moment. Join me as we learn together how to find joy, celebrate the simple things in life, use events to grow your business, entertain with purpose, and have a whole lot of fun along the way. Cheers to Celebrating Simple Life. Today on Celebrating Simple Life, the podcast, I'm chatting with Monique Willms. With a background in education, she began her career teaching junior high in the public school system and now substitutes part-time but homeschools her own children. She has a wide range of interests and passions, but they all culminate in the desire to share and equip others. She offers homeschool speaking and workshops, photography and classes, preaching and conference speaking, homeschool consulting, design consulting, resource creation, and Instagram partnerships. She might just be one of the most creative people I have ever known. Monique and I actually go way back, like seriously way back to junior high. She is such an incredible woman on the inside and out. Her sense of humor, creativity, and the ways that she inspires and encourages others to live their best lives is absolutely inspiring. You are going to love our conversation today, so tune in. Hello, Monique. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. This is so fun. I feel like I cannot start this conversation without addressing the fact that you are one of my longest friends from the beginning of time, all the way back to junior high.
Yes, I have seen it all, and you have seen it all.
You have. We could really do a very, very interesting episode, which is not the direction we're going to take this today, but maybe in the future we can do a blast from the past and get all of the old gang to hop on with all of our shenanigans from the 90s.
They were the glory days for sure.
Weren't they? Especially right now. Everything that's going on, I feel like, wow, how did we not realize that was the absolute most wild, carefree time of our life?
Yes.
Maybe we did.
It was so good. I mean, Celine Dion, air bands until the middle of the night.
Right? Like all of it. I could laugh for days thinking about it. So maybe we need to have that be something just to lighten things up these days. Maybe we should start like sharing all of our blasts from the past photos just to remember the times when life was really carefree.
Yep, I think it's a good idea.
So I'm so excited to have you on the show today because for my listeners that haven't been friends with you since junior high and know the ins and the outs of things going on in your life, I would love for you to just introduce yourself and tell us about you and what you do and sort of, what makes you Monique and why are we chatting today?
Right. Oh, so many things. I don't know if you follow the Enneagram at all, but I'm a 7. So yeah. I like to do all of the things all of the time, which makes introductions tricky sometimes. But right now I am a former public school teacher who still does a little bit of substitute teaching, but I full-time homeschool my own children who are 10 and 12. And I also run a photography business on the side, and I do a ton of public speaking, either at homeschool conferences, workshops, things for the city. I do different classes on hand lettering and different things like that. And then I also preach in my home church every few weeks.
I love it. I just had a blog post recently that I pegged you in, and we were chatting about this because you are literally one of the most creative humans I know. And I feel like I'm sure everything that you touch doesn't turn to gold because I'm sure not all of it gets posted for the world to see. But everything that I see you do, I'm like, oh my goodness, how are you so not how are you? I know how you are because you also are willing to put in a lot of hard work and effort and time to learn things. So, but it's just amazing. You are just so creative, and I love following. Obviously, social media is a wonderful thing for staying in connection and in touch, especially because you live in the metropolis of Estevan.
I sure
not
do.
In my city of Saskatoon, so this is great.
Yeah.
So with all of these hats that you wear, obviously what's going on in the world right now, I'm sure is definitely affecting you in lots of ways. However,
your day-to-day routine in regards to having your kids at home is not new for you. This is your usual. So, well, most of us are, what's the nice way to put this? Scrambling, feeling a little chaotic, maybe like our worlds have come crashing around us because we are not used to having the kids home all day. You were like one of the first persons I messaged out. She'd be like, oh boy, here we go. Help us now, Monique, because you are the expert and all of us are like little fish floundering in the sea right now. So what is your like when you decided to homeschool your children, I guess, how did you come to that decision first and foremost? I mean, you're a teacher, so seems like.
Yeah, well, even as a teacher, I definitely said, like, I will never homeschool. Said those words on multiple occasions.
I love the I will never. That's my favorite.
I will never wear skinny jeans. I will. All of them. I've done them all, Kim. I've done them all. So but definitely didn't ever see myself homeschooling. Had really weird misconceptions of homeschooling. And then I think my son was around 3 when we decided that we would homeschool. So it was actually like quite early that before it was even a thought.
School. Okay.
Yeah. So obviously being that I was a teacher, I started just thinking through a lot of those things. I felt overwhelmed a lot as a teacher because of class sizes. So, I mean, my first year teaching, I had 34 grade 8s in a classroom and I couldn't even move. Right.
That sounds like a nightmare.
I couldn't move from the back of the classroom to the front. Like, I would just be like, hey, everyone, turn over here because I can't, like, their bodies are big, right? Like,
yeah, these are not like small people anymore. These are like adult size.
Yeah. So, and then on top of that, you have so many different special needs that you're just trying to meet everybody's needs. And I just felt like kids were constantly slipping through the cracks, and not just kids who struggled, but kids who excelled as well. Like, I wasn't able to give them the time and attention that they needed to really flourish. And so I just kind of felt like I just went through my career just having like one hand tied behind my back and feeling frustrated a lot of the time. And so when we started thinking about our own kids' education, I was like, hey, well, I'm not ready to be away from them all day yet. And I really just don't want them in an overcrowded classroom right now. So why don't I do what I can to ease the load on the public system, because I'm fully capable and want to teach my own children. So, and to give them that kind of different foundation, I guess. We kind of said we would start and just see how it went. And then we just absolutely fell in love with it. And not that it doesn't have its challenges, but I think every educational choice has its challenges, but what we get out of this one is just so the perfect fit for our family.
That is so great. I love that. Well, and I'll tag the links afterwards to your Instagram and blog, but the things that you guys do, and I think maybe it's partially too, because I myself also feel like quite a creative person.
Yeah.
And the career that I'm in is creative, and I do lots of stuff that's creative. So the idea of teaching my children doesn't feel like something that I couldn't do, but I feel like when I see people like yourself and other homeschool teaching friends that I have who are really good at documenting the things that they do and putting things out there and having it really easy to understand as to the types of things that you're going through and just making it a part of your life versus it feeling like there's school and there's life and there's all these like walls between it. It just feels like it's kind of a flow into one or the other. And it just looks like such a cool way to be able to connect with your kids on such a different level, which is exactly what you described. It works for your family. And this is by no means saying here nor there, because you and I both are doing things differently with our kids' education. So there's no right or wrong way. But yeah, I love that was a thought that went through your mind, especially as a teacher, because I feel like this might be stereotypical, but I feel like a lot of teachers probably wouldn't necessarily feel that way because they're a teacher. And the idea is to teach in the public school system generally, I guess, when you get out of being a teacher.
Yeah, exactly.
So what I really would love to hear your thoughts on in this, I feel like because there is so much talk right now about about COVID and about all of this uncertainty and things that are going on, not that it doesn't have its place and time to be spoken of, and everybody has their own issues and stories and circumstances that are very different from everybody else's, and we all have our own ways that we're processing of things right now. But what would you say right now has sort of been some of the things that you've experienced with mindset and taking care of your mental health right now, and things that you would maybe recommend to parents such as myself and to other listeners who have been thrown into having their kids home full time when that wasn't something that they made the choice like you did to do, and it was sort of drop of a hat, like, here you go, this is what's happening. So what would be some techniques and things that you have fit into your days prior to all of this? Because obviously you're at home with your kids all day, so you're always making this a bit of a part of your day, as well as what's happening right now.
Yeah, well, I've definitely learned, and well before this, that I am only as healthy as I am mentally healthy. And I feel like we're pretty similar personalities, that we're like a racehorse personality where we're just doing all the things all of the time, and we can handle a lot typically, but there have definitely been seasons where I've just not been a healthy racehorse. I've just been taking on too much and not being able to manage that and like deal with the amount of stress that we're under. And so definitely have found some things. Mindset is huge. Right now, I think a lot of it for me is surrender. I like to control things. And I think that's even a part of why I homeschool. Like, I didn't want to have somebody else teach me.
That's an honest answer. I like that. Only because I can relate so well to the control.
Yeah. So definitely a lot of times in the day, I am like reminding myself, okay, I surrender. This is not all under my control. And I have to evaluate, okay, what is on my plate to do? Okay. And I think when we practically look at what's actually on our plate, sometimes we put a lot more things on our plate that we actually have no control over. And we think that worrying about them is actually action, and it's not. And so when I look at what's on my plate and I do that, then I feel productive, and I can just be like, okay, well, I'm actually doing all that I can right now. So I just have to live my life and do the day to day. For me, nature is so huge. I've spent a ton of time in the last half a year to a year researching everything about how nature affects us physically and mentally and emotionally and spiritually. And I could write books on it, but I will suffice to say that I really do believe that nature is a very simple solution to a lot of what we are actually struggling with as a society on a day-to-day basis. So for me, I do make sure that we get out in nature every single day, whether we feel like it or not, whether it's minus 40, we just do it. And so we've really embraced that this winter. There's no such thing as bad weather. We're going full Swedish, and we're just getting the right gear and getting outside and being active. And it has that's probably one of the things that has made the most difference in my mental health, for sure. And especially during this time, we have been going out. We head out of town, we go for hikes, we get outside, we play in the woods, we play with sticks, we make forts, and all of that has been so helpful. I think alone time is still, like, it feels very ironic to say alone time during self-isolation, but I think that sometimes when we're used to kind of like spreading out as a family, and that's kind of how we get like our own time, that when we actually have to do it within like the four walls of our house or like a yard, or if you have young children and you can't just like leave them while you go on a walk.
Right.
That's what I do. Is that you actually have to be really intentional about like, oh, well, we need these times where we can just all kind of chill and get some personal space. So I know when my kids were young, it was definitely quiet time. I always encourage people to like give themselves like a week though to teach their kids how to do quiet time, rather than be like, okay, you're going to go sit in your room for half an hour by yourself. Good luck. Like, they're just going to drive you crazy. So teaching them what they can do and all that kind of stuff.
What would you say on that? I'm just going to back this up here to the quiet time, because I feel like I mean, again, the stage that I'm at with my kids as well, they stay home by themselves and do things, and that isn't our thing. And I've actually been thinking a lot about that with families with younger kids right now. I'm like, wow, everybody's in their own place with this. And for people that do have young children where they can't go for a walk or right now I am not leaving to really go do much anyways besides a walk because of this isolation. But on normal days, I would definitely be going and doing lots of different things in daytime and evenings that don't involve me wondering if my kids are okay. They just are they're the way they are and doing their own thing, you know. But what would be some, I guess, tangible tips and ways that you would suggest, even for people that are our children's age, who, like my kids, who aren't used to being at home all day, every day, because they're used to being at school, which they're great with routines at school, but it definitely is taking some work here at home to figure out how all of us can live harmoniously in a routine right now, because this is very new for all of us to be home together all of the time, like most people. So what would be some ways that you would suggest starting that teaching process, I guess, at any age? And obviously you tailor this to the age of your child based on what's appropriate for their age group. But even for kids our age who are like, what do you mean, like quiet time? I think I mentioned this actually on a different podcast episode before, where I used the story of Lucia, my 9-year-old, always for years has used the term, I want to go relax. And I know that means she wants to watch TV. And I keep on saying to her, I'm like, you realize, like, you can just say, I want to go watch TV if you want to go watch TV. Like, I just want to make sure we're clear here that you recognize that relaxing doesn't mean TV. Like, you realize that relaxing is this whole other big, huge word that involves billions of things, and that TV means just TV. It's beginning and end definition. And so we talk about this on a regular basis, because she'll still say it sometimes, and she is more than aware that that's not what it is, but it's just this thing ingrained with her with like, oh, I feel like I want to go to relax. And it's really been a struggle, especially now, to be like, okay, let's think of all of the things that you like to do, and hey, guess what? You can do any of them at any time of day. You don't just need to think that relaxing means watching TV. So what would be your thoughts on that for helping a parent retrain or train a child to understand and respect the boundaries of relaxation and alone time being a positive thing versus sometimes it can get a negative connotation to it for kids that are extroverts, such as mine.
No, for sure. That's a great question. I think that definitely with younger children, you want to start by starting with like way smaller time increments. So it might be, 10 minutes to start. And usually what I did was we would choose a pile of books that would go with the child. They could pick a few of their favorite toys, and then if you trust them, maybe some crayons and some paper if you trust them not to draw on your wall, because as you know, silence is a very scary sound sometimes. My children turned my kitchen into a skating rink with butter one time when I thought they were quietly playing.
Word. I love it.
Yeah, that was awesome. I cried.
Yep, I would too. I laughed because I would have also cried. Yep.
Yeah. And so we talk about like, what are the ways we can spend time just enjoying, like playing with our toys or just playing quietly. We just say that we're not going to like be jumping off of things, and we're not going to be making it loud for other people in the house, and we're not going to constantly call mom and dad and do things like that. And so we kind of work through that. Now that my kids are older, they take the same sorts of things. They take books with them, even if it's just like a picture book they want to look through, or if they're reading a novel, they take books. My daughter, she's one that we've never had to really teach anything. Like she has no currency. You cannot give her a consequence because she doesn't care about anything. She will just entertain herself. So like you would just take away all of her toys and make her sit in a corner, and she would just sit there, and all of a sudden all of her fingers were people.
Right.
And
time of her life.
She's like, you can't hurt me. Not that we were trying to, but you're like
something's gotta get you here.
No, she will just entertain herself for hours. So, but my son he wants to move on to the next thing always, like right away. So for him, he needed to have several options. So if he's tired of reading in 15 minutes, well, then he needs to have some toys there to play with. Things like Lego and that kind of stuff are great to have in a quiet time because they just involve a bit of concentration and they can do so many things with that. I would definitely always stay away from toys that do all the work for your child. You know, you want them to be something that's going to like initiate some creative play. Maybe you have a little blanket fort and they're happy to spend half an hour in there, you know. You can kind of make it interesting that way.
I love that. So do you on a regular basis, including right now while we kind of have limited other places to go besides our homes and nature, do you still have regular quiet time in your day?
I would say it's not scheduled in our day, but it does happen just naturally. Right. So I think because we've been doing this for so long, I mean, we're in our 7th year of home education, that we just have very natural rhythms that have evolved, and they just know when they need their own time. And I have learned, and I think that's a really key factor, I think, when you have your kids at home with you all the time is that disciplining yourself to step back and just observe for a couple minutes before you interject yourself into what they're doing. And I wish I had known that 7 years ago and that I hadn't been learning it through this time, because it's been a game changer for me. So, you know, like if I'm like, in my mind, I'm tasked. And so I'm like, okay, we have math to get done. So I would just like barge in and be like, okay, math time in 5 minutes, blah, 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 blah. And now I'm, you know, in the last few years learning, okay, look, what are they doing? Oh, well, right now they're like playing together really well. And they're engaged in like a really creative game. I'm not going to mess that up. And so I just hang back and I just let it play out. And then if I can start to like notice, you know, when they're getting a little restless and they're getting a little nitpicky with each other, then I'm like, oh guys, math in 5 minutes. And they just they're ready for the break, you know? So,
yeah. So what you're saying is we should be giving ourselves a little bit of grace here, that we have been doing this for 7 days, not 7 years.
Oh my gosh. So much grace. Grace upon grace. Like, and this is not even homeschooling for us either. Like, this is quarantine schooling. This is completely different. Like,
totally.
Yeah,
totally. No, I agree. That I love what you're saying, because I feel like that's the biggest thing. And I think for some reason as women, I feel like we do this to ourselves in lots of different areas of our life. And now for those of us who have sort of, for most of us who are now diving deep into this, and for all of us who are in a very new place and stage, whether you homeschool or don't homeschool, this is still very different, like you said, with not really being able to add a lot of the regular activities and things that you would normally be doing to break up a day and the four walls of a house are differently. But what would be, you've given so many amazing suggestions already, but what would be just an example, I guess, in order just to give listeners who are maybe just feeling a little bit confused as to how to even get started on some formation of a bit of a routine, even if it is very, very loose. And I mean, you know me, I 1000% type A'd the whole entire situation and have full color-coded Excel documents for both of the children to like go on, which my husband, who is not type A, but very technical and good at coming up with systems, he helped build this like thing for, not build, but it like, he spent a bit of time just like putting it together and having there be lots of different options for them to do, just because our kids aren't used to, this isn't something they're used to, is being the decision makers of what they get to do next, which kind of excites me about this time a little bit, because I like that they're actually getting a chance to learn what they want their day to look like, and that they're actually allowed to trust their own instincts as to like what they feel should happen, which really doesn't happen in a public school setting for a million reasons that are all very understandable.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, it's been kind of cool to see there. So we have like some not structured things, but things that would be more like the math and like different things that their teachers have given as suggestions of things that they could do, where they may or may not be things that they would necessarily be building into their perfect day if they were building it themselves. Right. But also lots of blank spaces for them to just, and given them some lists of things just so that they can be triggered to think, oh yeah, that would be fun to do that, versus just sort of thinking blankly of, okay, I'm thinking about Netflix, I'm thinking about, they're kind of have in their minds, I think, the things that they would normally be doing like after school to unwind after a day of school is what I think they're still in the mindset of a little bit, versus, hey, this is like my day, all the things we'd be doing at school, and they're kind of just excited for this new routine. Mm-hmm. So what would be some things or some suggestions, I guess, just to very loosely help people get into some type of routine, or ways that they can kind of build this, and how they can kind of better listen to what their kids and families need, versus what feels like should be just like a rigid routine and everybody should copy the same thing.
Right. No, I really like that, because what I find right now, I mean, we have that the Facebook group I started, like Suddenly Homeschooling, that has, you know, like 1,600 people or something in it. And it's such a great community space, but it's also overwhelming. Like, it's overwhelming even for me as a homeschooler right now with how many things are being offered. Like, usually we have to like fight for these things tooth and nail to like get access to things for our children. And now everyone's like, here, every author is doing a read aloud every single day, and every fitness person is doing workouts
and art classes and drawing and painting, and totally.
I feel like a kid who just has too many toys, and so you just walk away from the mall. I'm like, I don't even know where to start with it.
It's like, fine, I just want a blank piece of paper and nothing. Thank you.
Exactly. So I just think there's a lot of noise right now. I think there's a lot of people trying to help, and it's awesome. But I also think that it's a bit overwhelming to weed through. And I think that for people, like you said, you know who you are. You're type A, you want a schedule, and it works well for you. And I think that's one of the big things that parents sometimes forget, is to factor themselves into this equation, is that home education isn't just about your kids. It's very much a family lifestyle. And so it has to work for all family members. So it has to work for you too. And so I think if parents understand, oh, I really like a schedule, or a schedule makes me super itchy, and I'm going to break out into hives if I look at this color-coded thing. And I think that's important, because I'm the person 100%. That's going to break out into hives. Like, if I see a schedule, or people ask me, like, what curriculum do you use? And I'm like, curriculums make me itchy. I don't want to follow a curriculum. I want to make my own up as we go every 15 minutes. No.
Totally.
There is so much uncertainty in the world right now, and while gathering and coming together needs to take extra precautions, and in a lot of cases, a temporary hiatus right now, this doesn't mean that we still can't connect in unique ways to keep our relationships and connections strong. If you are on the lookout for a creative way to cheer up a friend, show your significant other, bestie, coworkers, and special people in your life that you care, I've curated adorable, delicious, and unique candy grazing boxes for you to ship out. A beautiful, delectable candy grazing box can be shipped right to your door, or as a surprise to a friend's door on your behalf. Free delivery in Saskatoon, and shipping available across Canada. And because we could all use a little more joy right now, you can get an exclusive code to receive 15% off by typing CELEBRATE15 at checkout. You can click right from your home at celebratingsimplelife.com and use the code CELEBRATE15, because today is a great day to celebrate.
So, I think that's important, to figure out kind of what works for you, kind of take a look at what works for your children, and then to start to just build in. I like rhythms as opposed to maybe a rigid structure. So for us, we start every morning with a read aloud, and that's a way for us to ease into our day. We use audiobooks right now because I like to keep my hands busy too. I always want my kids' hands to be busy when we're listening to reading, because then they pay attention for far longer. and they're far more engaged if their hands are busy. So that means drawing or Play-Doh or making grilled cheese or whatever it may be. So we listen to that. We do math at some point every day, and I kind of leave it up to them when they want to do their math. We do other things like, copy work or certain things. We just kind of work them into our day, and then we pile in the rest of our learning around that, including our outdoor time and stuff like that. So I think that kind of figuring out what are some of the things that maybe you think, okay, are we going to read to ourselves every day? Like, are my kids going to go somewhere and read for 15 minutes a day? Great. That becomes part of your rhythm. Another really great way to kind of see what your kids are interested in is something that we call strewing. And so what it is it's basically like an invitation to learn. I don't know if you've noticed this about kids, but if you're like, call them all to the table and like say, guys, we're going to have so much fun doing XYZ. They're all going to roll their eyes and they're going to determine not to have any fun. And
right.
That's just what they're going to do. If you, however, were to go and just to look relaxed and interested in something, that you are like a child magnet, and they're going to flock to you.
Like when you try to sneak opening a snack out of the cupboard and suddenly everyone's starving. Yeah.
Exactly. So we kind of take that concept with like either I might just like have all the paints out and I just might start painting. And they're like, what are you doing? Can I paint? Sure. If you want, I guess. Like,
if you
so
must.
We kind of like use our disinterest in our favor.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, we got to be tricky with these children.
Like psychology as its finest.
Absolutely. Another way to do that is just all of a sudden, like you have books in your shelf, but they don't get picked up. So I'll just clear my coffee table and I'll just throw out a bunch of books. Never fails. They will all of a sudden sit down and just start looking through these books that they haven't looked through. Or I might, I one time threw like a bunch of cut up Christmas lights and some batteries on the table, and I'm like, and I just left a note like, see if you can light up the bulb. And they just had to figure out if they could complete a circuit, and they didn't know anything about circuits at that point. And so those are some fun ways to kind of like get interested, and just you kind of strew a few things around the house and see what they gravitate towards.
That's brilliant. That would have never crossed my mind, me and my type A scheduled mind. I love that.
And it's not my idea. I forget who coined it, but it's very popular in the homeschool world.
That's amazing. I love that. So what I feel like I'm hearing you say, and I feel like I love that you address that there's just so much noise going on, because I think that happens on a regular basis in every single aspect of our life, which I think is going to be one of the most amazing gifts to have come out of all of this once it's over. Well, not once it's over, currently right now, and hopefully continuing on once this is over and we're in a new place of life again, is just that the noise is deafening to feeling like you can actually think and hear and make decisions of things that are best for yourself and your family, and not always needing to be so worried about what the status quo is or what everybody else is doing, because I feel like that's happening times a million right now, just from even a schooling perspective specifically, just because that's sort of one of the biggest top of mind things that has sort of been a 180 for most families, is just that they're not used to having their kids home all of the time and being taught by somebody else. But I just feel like it's giving everybody such different perspectives of, first of all, like gratitude towards public school teachers, first and foremost, is what comes to mind, just in what they manage all day long while all of us do our own jobs and our own thing, but our kids come home and you kind of hear snippets about their day, but not really fully engaged into all of the stuff that's really going on. And I'm really grateful for that right now. And I feel like being able to have them home and just develop this new routine is just, I don't know, it's making me feel like I'm tuning out a lot of different noises too, and trusting myself more to the fact that I am capable of doing this, and it doesn't have to be anywhere close to perfect. It just has to be what's working for us today. Yeah. I love that.
So absolutely.
I feel like so this, again, I guess comes back to, which is going to just keep coming up over and over in this conversation, because I feel like it's happening in so many conversations right now. It's just this idea of mindset. And I feel like that term sometimes even just feels really overused, but yet I think sometimes that's still a bit of a like confusing term, because I think sometimes when we are feeling blah or not great or whatever the case may be, we aren't always sure why. We haven't really been able to identify like what has or hasn't happened in our day or in our routine, or maybe we didn't get that outside time and our body is like complaining about it, but we aren't sure why we're feeling grumpy, or, like different things like that. Like we haven't really put two and two together, or you ate a big giant piece of cake and you aren't sure why you're feeling sluggish later, like just all of these things, which nothing's wrong with any of those things, but just being able to be aware as to how the little bits and pieces of your day kind of all add up to making you feel your best self. So what would you say, you've already, again, addressed so many great things for mindset and how to just give ourselves grace, but what would you say would be some of the ways that you practically bring this into your day right now and always, and I guess especially right now, seeing what's going on in the world, seeing everything as a blessing versus feeling like this is something catastrophic that's happening to us, versus, I guess, just kind of seeing all of the little tiny gifts that could come of this if we choose to see them. Right.
Yeah, I think, I've definitely learned through the years, as I know you have as well, that, the most of our growth comes through trials. And I wish that wasn't the way life worked. I feel like we are collectively, and it's an interesting time because it's very rare that we're all in something together.
Totally.
It's usually, we have our own trials and struggles, but to feel like everybody's in it together is very unique. But we're all in this class right now that none of us signed up for. We wouldn't take it again. 0 stars. Do not recommend.
Totally. Negative.
Yeah, throw it on Yelp. It's just not a good situation, but our only choice, and back to that surrender, is like, well, it just actually is what it is. And so it's really learning to be present in the moment. I think that more than I've ever had to before, no matter what I've gone through, I've been faced more with having to okay, I will not live in the what if, I will live in the what is. We are all currently healthy. We are at home, and we are doing everything we can right now to stay that way and to protect those that need us to protect them. And so we are choosing we didn't sign up for this class, but I don't want to waste it. And so our only choice really is to be miserable through it or to make the best of it. And I think that we have never seen in our time a reset like this on schedules. I think that the family life and schedules have gotten way out of control. I think that people don't realize how much stress and anxiety they have in their life because their schedule just allows nothing for them there's just no margins. And when you use up your margins, you don't have anything for when there's an actual trial that you have to face. And so I think that with this reset and with these resetting of schedules and this time with family, I think that it's just human nature that we take the path of least resistance, right? And right now, a lot of our pathways are shut down. We have to actually deal with some stuff. So sometimes that's sibling relationships, right? It's easy for our kids not to have the greatest relationships if they don't have to spend a lot of time around each other. And when we're all running in a lot of different directions, that's really easy to kind of not have time to keep up on. This is a great time for kids to have to learn to work with their sibling and to enjoy them as a friend and a playmate. And so, I would encourage parents to do whatever they can to facilitate those relationships with their kids right now, between each other, also obviously within the family, that this is really unique that we get to spend time with our kids and to learn about them and to discover how they learn and what frustrates them, and to think outside the box with education, because nobody is expecting anything from anybody right now, right? No school division is expecting parents to teach their kids. they're just not. I mean, even I've slacked off a little more because nobody's going to expect anything from me now either. You know, it's a great time to rethink education, to see what sparks interest in your kids, to follow rabbit trails, to be like, oh, like you're reading a book about, you know, a beaver and the kid is like, oh, like why does a beaver have a flat tail? You have time to chase that answer down and to see where it leads. So I think that's like such a gift. And I think that a lot of priorities are going to change after this, that, you know, we might not be rushing back to the same normal that we left.
Yeah, and that's what I'm really hoping. That's what I'm really hoping for. I've said to a few people recently that there's just so many things about what's going on right now that have reminded me of some of the feelings that I had when Cassidy was first diagnosed with cystic fibrosis 7 years ago. It just, except it wasn't the whole world. It was just me, and we weren't the only people on earth that have ever gone through this experience. However, in that moment, it was our experience, and that was what was going on, and nobody else that we knew of was going through that. So it felt very isolating a little bit, just because we felt absolutely surrounded with support. Don't get me wrong. It was the most unbelievable experience of my life, but also it was just the loneliest experience too, because it was just so scary and terrifying, and you didn't know what any day was going to bring. And it's just been so interesting because there's a part of me that just has never felt calmer right now than I have for years, because I feel like I'm recognizing about myself that I think I'm stronger than I think I am, and that I have actually worked through a lot of things for my own being and mental health. Not that I'm never stressed. I'm stressed a lot, and lots of things to be stressed about, just like lots of other people. But that I'm really adaptable to change, and I've made a lot of changes, and a lot of big changes in our life in a very quick period of time that some people never make in their lifetime. So things that are coming up right now, it just sort of felt like, okay, falling into a new rhythm. Like everything just sort of felt like easy in regards to that, because we've just been so used to making so many big changes. And again, not to negate the fact that there are really, really difficult, catastrophic things going on for many different people and families and countries and things that are going on. But for us in this moment right now, it feels like, well, I've already been through something that has rocked my world far more than what's currently going on. And so for now, it's comforting knowing that everybody's going through this one together somehow. You know?
No, and that's such a good point. Like, I think, like, Bill Johnson talks about this analogy of when he's like, you know, like pushing up against this rock that won't move, and he's pushing for so long and it doesn't move. But then when another rock that's smaller comes along, it just like skyrockets out of the way. And that reminds me of your situation, because you've had to push against this massive rock for so long that you're seeing a lot of the fruit of that in your life, being able to handle these other types of situations because of what you've already put in the work for.
Yeah. And I hope that because we didn't choose this, and because we have no control over this, I really am hoping that so many others are going to get to experience that gift, even though I wouldn't ever wish upon a lightning bolt moment like what I've been through and what many people have been through, and now what our whole world is going through in regards to this whole situation in many different ways. You don't wish those things upon anybody or anything, or hope that somebody has something hard happen to them to learn a lesson. That's not how it works. But that is what happens. And I think a lot of people don't actually realize what really, really hard situations look like until they're in it. And now I think it's easy to sort of complain and like, oh, this sucks, or this sucks, or this sucks. But you know what? These are all just like any other day, except the weird part is that it's all happening to everybody at the same time right now. But every other day, there's really hard things that go on in every single person's life in some way, shape, or form. In some story, everybody has a story of something that's gone on in their life and everybody has a different level of what feels like a catastrophe to them. So some people have a lower threshold of what they feel is a catastrophe, and that's fine. And some people have a higher threshold of what they feel is a catastrophe. And so I think for us just to be able to see these gifts, like you said, of getting to spend more time with our kids and actually being aware. And I find it funny. I don't know about you, but I have been finding during this time that I always work from home, so this is not new for me either to be at home during the daytime. Just usually my home is very quiet. More of a Home Alone type of scenario than anything else. But yeah, I'm used to being at home, so my routine feels very similar right now, except that there's 3 other humans in my house all the time. And so I've been, now I'm derailing my thoughts here, but I've been thinking about just I guess the tasks and the things during the day where when I'm working at home and trying to actually get my job done from home and all of the other things about being at home, because I've worked from home for about 5-6 years now, so this is my normal. But the laundry and just house stuff and things that are going on and making meals, I'm always feeling like for some reason, even though those are zero deals, it shouldn't even be a big deal, but cooking for some reason, always I get to the end of the day and once the kids get home, I'm like, oh boy, now what are we going to eat? And that has so not been the case for the last week or two around here because time, we got nothing but time. So it doesn't feel like it's such a commodity, where I think what I tell myself in those times are, I have so many more important things to do than cook dinner. I could be doing this. I could work for an extra hour. I could be doing this and this. And I tell myself those things. But right now I'm like, well, yep, definitely have the time. And it doesn't feel like a chore. I'm enjoying cooking, enjoying doing stuff. And it's an interesting mind shift of something that is basic that everybody does, but just seeing the time and seeing the value of it being different has changed my perspective for sure on things that up until a couple of weeks ago felt like a chore. Right.
I know. I think it's such a gift, and I think that there's going to be a big effect of just people reevaluating their time spendage. I think it'll feel like if people try to go back into what their normal was, I think it'll be an incredible shock to the system. I don't know that after that reset. Yeah.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So, and I think too that even from we've been talking a lot about school and the kids and that type of thing, but when you're looking at your whole life as a whole, even just from a budget perspective and what's actually needed in life and what isn't needed, and realizing when everything gets taken away from you and everything is we're definitely trying to support local on the things that we need to buy right now. But my career is entirely about gathering people together as an entrepreneur. Right. So job canceled for right now, for the most part. Besides clients that I do things digitally for and that kind of thing. But so we're trying to make sure that we're watching our spending and that things are staying at bay at this time while we feel like we're kind of not having the same level of income that we did prior when people were still allowed to gather together and have events and do stuff. But, we're looking through our budget and doing things too. And it's just amazing, which we do this on a regular basis just because 7 years ago we made some really big decisions in our life because of Cassidy's health. And that's just sort of been an ongoing thing for us. So it's interesting now we're kind of oh man, we kind of haven't done that for a little while again. And it's even sort of reminding us of things that we're pretty comfortable with, but it's kind of a refresher to us as well. And just to look at your budget and maybe we don't need this. Maybe this is something that is frivolous that seemed like it was a necessity before, but now it's easier to just be slash, slash, slash.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. We're, in a very similar boat. We live, pretty minimalistically. Well, that's not a word. Minimally.
Minimalistically? I like that.
I don't know.
You can make it a word.
You can make it a word. In obviously choosing to have one primary income in our family, but I substitute teach and I'm a photographer. So both those jobs canceled. Well,
totally.
Oh, nobody's paying me to homeschool my children, unfortunately. But
can you imagine? You could stand in the middle of your street and have them all stand at their windows and look outside Well, you have a digital system that imports your voice into their home.
Exactly. I have had offers. They have people like, "Kid, what do we pay to follow your curriculum?" And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I am so flattered, and that is so kind, but I don't even plan for my own kids." So.
Couldn't even tell you what it is. Yeah.
No. You literally have to just like have a camera in my house to be like, "Oh, we're gonna do this now."
I love that. So you always have amazingly cool and creative things on the go, but just in the last few days in particular, what would be a few highlights of things off the cuff of stuff that you guys have been doing either in nature or at home or wherever that would just be something to get the creative ideas flowing in my listeners?
Yeah. One thing I've been trying to be mindful of is that my kids don't have phones and they don't have access to their friends like I do with mine. And
right.
So that's been one thing that as much as I didn't initially want to do like something like Messenger Kids, we have done that and it's been really great for my kids and they've been so excited. My daughter, like her and her friend drew for 3 hours today. Like her friend was teaching her how to draw faces over Messenger Kids.
Oh, I love it.
And it was so sweet and they tell me every day, "Mom, thank you so much for Messenger Kids," because I just really like to be able to see my friends. Because normally they're with their friends all the time anyways, and we just haven't ever needed it, right? So,
right.
But, after about a week of, like, not seeing anybody, it was much needed. So we have hosted poetry tea time, which is another kind of, like, homeschooly thing where we set the table fancy, and we have tea, and we have goodies, and we read poetry. We pick poems to read to each other. We did one virtually with our friends, so we invited some of our public school friends to join us for their first poetry tea time, and we did like a rhyming family, kind of like a family feud, but with rhyming, and then we wrote a collective poem together. We've done like charades and stuff over that, so we've done some virtual gaming kind of things. Battleship, I think, is going to be next because that's easy to play against each other that way with just like graph paper.
Yeah.
Another thing for us has been exploring like our area in terms of like hiking some different areas that we haven't really gone further into. And so just making sure it's like, public land and that kind of stuff. But it's really kind of refreshing when you're in a situation where it feels like everything's been taken away from you to still have new experiences and that are good and not bad.
Yes, I agree. That's such a good perspective.
Yeah. So it's been super helpful to like, just be like, oh my gosh, we have lived in Estevan for 17 years and we have never walked these hills and look at all the cool things we found. So, just take a drive and start walking or, that kind of stuff, explore some areas that you haven't done before. We love doing lots of different art projects and stuff like that. So, like I said, with the strewing and different things, you can definitely set things out and allow your kids to kind of see what they're going to do. Blanket forts. The kids have a big blanket fort in the basement right now, and they're loving that.
I love it. That's a great idea. My kids haven't done that yet. I'm surprised. Maybe I need to just toss some blankets around.
Strew them. I kind of like
on it.
Strew them. I off the cuff made a comment the one day. One thing we actually did, and I mean, we typically try to keep a lot of like minimal toys, but we've gotten a little bit out of hand, I think, with the last 2 Christmases, and I'm totally going to blame it on the grandparents. But we went through one Saturday morning and we just literally took out 5 garbage bags full of their toys and just put them in the playhouse. And so there's just no toys in the basement right now, and they are loving it. Like, they just feel like it's a completely fresh space, and they're having a blast, and they're doing all this cool stuff down there. So they're really loving that.
I love that. That's so smart.
Yeah, it's been Simplicity Parenting is a really great book if anyone's looking for a justification for this lifestyle that we all now live.
That you've all just been thrown into.
Yeah, lots of great
research. It has a label to it. That makes people feel better.
Totally. It'll make you feel really good about all your parenting choices that you didn't have.
I'll link it in the show notes so that everybody can look it up and order it and have some reading material.
It's really good. You can do things like have a fancy dinner, like, place a little invite. You would be perfect for this. A little invite to everybody, like dress up in your fanciest clothes and have a candlelight dinner. that kind of stuff, have a fire in the backyard, have a little adventure. There's just so many things. I think that when you just kind of like just turn something really ordinary into something fun, like a friend of ours, it was her 40th birthday yesterday, and obviously she couldn't have a party. And so we kind of organized a little birthday parade. And so we like decorated our vehicles and we like drove by her house and honked and sang happy birthday.
That is the best thing I've heard.
Yeah. So, fully social distancing. We were all in our own vehicles, and then
I love that. Well, and I love that you reference this, because this is honestly the motto that I run my entire business by, is just having new experiences and making things an experience that it doesn't have to be anything. I think people think of an experience with a lot of bells and whistles around it versus the fact that you can make anything feel like it has bells and whistles on it if you all come in it with the attitude and energy that you want to have fun and you want to enjoy it. And that is often half the battle of just how you sort of arrive to an experience. And I think if you're all in it, I love your idea of having like a fancy dinner. And we did sushi making the other night for dinner, which was fun. Yeah. And everybody could just do their own. And we've also rearranged we have a 4-level split for our house. So really, really great time to have an open concept home with no walls that have any space from anybody else. But anyways, it seemed like a good idea when we bought it. No, we love our house. But anyways, not a lot of rooms besides bedrooms with doors that close. Everything else is just very open. So a little bit challenging when you're all trying to kind of do separate things throughout the day for parts of the day. But anyways, we turned our level that's kind of our family room level moved our furniture around, switched it all around, and it's a pretty long, narrow-ish kind of space, just the way that it's laid out. And Lucia has now put all of her gymnastics mats and my yoga mat and all of the mats that she can muster up to find and turn it into one big long running room where she can do all of her gymnastics tricks. And she's she's pretty tall, but small enough still as a kid that she can flip and tumble and do all of the stuff in there without worrying that she's going to hit anything on the ceiling or lights or anything else that's coming down. So it's perfect. It's been awesome to just have an indoor running space to complement their outside play.
Absolutely. That's amazing.
So I love your ideas. This is so great. I am going to definitely link your book and your references and the things that you've done in the show notes so that friends that are listening can just be inspired and not take it as, hey, you must do this, but take it as, hey, here's something to help your brain relax about the things that you're trying to think of to do tomorrow and next week, because we're going to be in this for a little while yet. And I think that the more we can kind of just talk and be open and honest about things that we're struggling with or things that we're feeling really great about, all in one and the same, that it kind of just, for me at least, feels like it helps feel like I know that I'm not alone and there's support and there's people there, and I don't have to think that I have to have this all figured out yesterday when this is all new for everybody.
Absolutely.
Yeah, love it. Well, thank you so much for the chat. You are just such an amazing woman, and I wish that we lived closer so that we could see each other more often, but social has been lovely in being able to stay in touch and seeing what's going on in each other's lives. And so I will tag your Instagram and your blog in the show notes so that people can follow along all of the wild adventures that you have in your very creative days. And thank you so much for being on the show today.
Oh, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure hanging out with you. So it was a lot of fun.
This show would not be possible without you, my incredible listeners. It would mean the world to me if you would subscribe to Celebrating Simple Life on Apple Podcasts or download and listen on Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you choose to listen. If you really want to make my day, leave a review. These reviews, ratings, and sharing screenshots of podcast episodes that were engaging for you on your Instagram stories and tagging friends that you think should hear the episode too really helps the podcast grow. It makes me so happy that I often select reviews to read on the show, and if yours is chosen, you will receive a special gift from me. Thank you for being a part of my mission to connect stories of business and life. Cheers to Celebrating Simple Life.